Welcome to this newest episode of the Secure AI podcast hosted by Wodan AI, and today we are very honored to have a special guest on the call. Today we are cutting through AI security hypes with someone who's mapped the industry for decades. Richard Stiennon, founder and Chief Research Analyst at IT Harvest. We'll talk attacker automation, buyer mistakes, and what actually belongs in a modern stack. So with that, Richard, a very warm welcome to this podcast.
Awesome to be here, Bob. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So last time we met in person was a nice encounter. This time we have to do it virtually, but yeah, this works as well. Let's dive nose first in with a couple of topics that we have as a warm up. So from your point of view as an analyst, where would you say AI is actually moving the needle for security, and where would you consider it more of a theater play?
I'll start with the theater play because theater play has been around for a couple of decades, and it's all the vendors that talk about AI before there were large language models, which we all admit are magical, right? It's like something really happened November 30th, 2022. Everybody became aware, including the people at OpenAI, who weren't really prepared for what happened next, right? I think there are now 800 million monthly users of OpenAI in its various forms, and they were just not ready for that because they didn't realize what they had created. And that's been, to me, the exciting thing about large language models. The companies that said they were doing AI before that were doing machine learning. And if they're doing it well, they hired a bunch of PhDs in math and statistics and would apply that to things that they had a lot of. So alerts, basically, logs and alerts. Most of the ones that said they had AI were just doing Bayesian analysis, statistical analysis on stuff to identify outliers. And I was always extremely suspicious of them. If they said they did AI, I'd go to LinkedIn and I could look through all their employees, even if they had hundreds, and find that they had no data scientists on board, no PhDs from Cambridge on board. So, what were they really doing? But it's gotten exciting. There really is AI security now. Like there really is useful applications for AI. Multiple trillions of dollars of value creation just in the last 3.5 years. So there's something there in the broader world of AI. And I believe that there's something there in the world of security that we play in that we have systems that can interpret data and human language and machine language too. They're really, really good at interpreting machine language. If you ever want to test it yourself, next time your computer crashes, just cut and paste the big crash report into ChatGPT or Claude and ask it what's going on here. The other thing is when you get spam. So, everybody gets spam, and it gets through all the filters that are in place from wherever you're getting your email. Grab the full text of the spam, pass it to ChatGPT. It immediately demonstrates its ability to tell you what's going on. It checks the SPF, checks the DMARC, tells you if it's spam or suspicious, warns you not to click links. Brilliant. Now just apply that across the board to all the logs that are funneled into your SIM today, and magic starts to happen to the point where you can feel confident that you could look at every single log and do something about it. So you could either say, doesn't matter, right? It's false positive, false negative, or just, noise, which is 99% of all logs. But for a human to actually do that, a human would burn out in about 45 minutes, as they do, right? So they got other stuff to keep them occupied. But actually looking at 100% of logs and triaging them to the point of either saying, here's something you should really look at, or go in the next step, as some of the vendors are proposing already, go to the next step and do something about it and, reset an IP address or username or password, sequester a machine so it can be further investigated. All those things completely possible today. And as a matter of fact, today is the day after OpenAI just announced their agentic system thingy that looks like it's going to turn everything upside down. Yeah, may very well be possible right now, today, to create your own agent to do that. So it might be quite a threat to all of the startups that are doing that.
So to put some little nuance to what you said in the very beginning, like ML didn't cut it. That's specifically true for seams and logs, and so because you need language models for that, correct? So machine learning in general is AI, but it didn't cut it for the security business.
Yeah, and it's AI in a different sense, right? It was something that people worked on for since I was in college, and I don't want to say how long ago that was, but Ronald Reagan was president, and like the concepts back then seemed a lot like decision trees. It hadn't even gotten to the training part. I took a deep look at it back then. I just like, this is just like those Audubon, bird identification books, right? It's blue, put pencil in it. It's over 9 inches, pencil in. Up, it's a blue jay. That seems to be what everything was up until end of November of 2022.
So that's where the reality sits. So no, the theater is what was before, and you're saying that the reality for what really moves the needle is language interpretation.
Yeah, and
Cool.
and what is being demonstrated is, and I didn't come to this conclusion until earlier this year in April of 2025, that I've talked to a lot of the startups that had these goals of basically applying agentic AI to logs to do the tier 1 analysis. But then I started hearing from vendors that have been working for the last 18 months on producing a full SOC bot that could do the triage and the response to each of these problems as cases as they were created. And then at that time in April, I was predicting that there will be billion-dollar acquisitions in this space very, very soon, and that time is getting close. We only have 3 months left in the year. But sure enough, Protect AI, which isn't what we're talking about, wasn't SOC automation, but Protect AI was acquired for at least $650 million by Palo Alto Networks. Had a couple other and a few in the SOC automation space. There's been a total of 12 acquisitions of these startups. Today I count 173 AI security startups. 12 of them have been acquired in the last 12 months, 5 in September. So none in October yet, but the month is young. The total amount invested to date in these 173 companies is a meager $2.5 billion. Total return, if you look at the industry as a whole, the total money earned by founders and investors so far is $2.8 billion. So maybe that you could say that's positive return for the industry, which is pretty phenomenal.
Cool. Yeah. If you would take so in recent AI claims, like what would make the list of your disappointment of the year in that space?
Disappointment of the year. I'm such a optimist and positive. I think I think everyone, including the founders, are underestimating what's going on and overestimating how much time they have to take advantage of it. I talk to founders who have completely viable products and early customers, to the tune of they launched the product in January and they're already at $1 million ARR. And they're waiting for their next round, while a couple of their competitors have taken in, $50 million. You do not have time to wait for the optimal moment to raise your next round. You have to raise it right now, because you may have a better product, but that startup by a very seasoned startup founder with, the top line VCs is just going to snow you under. It'll be so frustrating. Your product's better, they get the sales, right? Because it's, as my friend Andrew Plato was reiterating to me yesterday, the first step of sales in startups is gaining credibility. And it sure helps to have the biggest venture capitalists behind you.
That is very true. And it's a message to the entire world and specifically to Europe to step up in that game.
Oh man, I was talking to a couple of guys. I think they're from maybe Ukraine, Lithuania.
Mhm.
And they started telling me, 6 months ago that they had this great idea for an agentic SOC automation tool. And they're, in the process of validating the idea, and everybody does that. You talk to CISOs or whoever your ICP is, and you validate the idea, and you talk to 100 before you go to investors. And I told them, stop doing that right now. I will validate the idea for you. Somebody's going to get $1 billion for doing just what you're talking about. If you want to be that somebody, get moving. Build it. You just got to build it right now.
So the old model was broken.
The old model is broken. And you know what? Frankly, I think the model of interviewing CISOs has always been broken. It's, there's no way Steve Jobs interviewed people about whether they wanted a phone in their iPods. Right? I was like, that didn't happen. And he, is famous for pointing that out. All right. The customers don't know what they will want. If you ask them what they want today, they'll say they want it in blue instead of white. But, I always hark back to the creation of ArcSight. So, yeah, maybe it's slightly mythological, but the founders of ArcSight basically went to, it was probably Kleiner Perkins, I think it was, and they were like entrepreneurs in residence working with Kleiner Perkins. They talked to a whole bunch of CISOs or whatever they were called back then, because this was mid 2000s. And they asked them, what's your biggest pain? And their biggest pain was logs, and handling all these logs. So they said, we're going to create a log management system. We're going to call it ArcSight. And nowhere in their pre-research did they learn of the 5 existing excellent products. So we're much better than ArcSight. IntelliTactics is the one that comes to mind all the time, right? They did not have the benefit of California VC money. They weren't based in California. Some of them were based out of Israel. ArcSight goes to town, and in a couple of years, they're the public company, right? They just own that space. Obviously, they're fallen to the wayside now, but same thing. Splunk comes along. Security people really need log management. Let's offer them our log management solution. And Elastic comes along. We got a better way. Okay, let's. It's like
that's how the market works.
Yeah.
Interesting. If you take it from to take a look from the buyer side, so you just mentioned the way Steve Jobs invented his products. He didn't do market research. By talking to the buyers, he had a bright idea. But if you take in the security industry, the buyers, CISOs and their teams, what do smart buyers have as criteria that most RFPs today from other customers are still missing, in your opinion?
Actually, well, the smart ones are doing RFPs, right? And RFPs with the real intent to discover the best product, right? And those are very, very few. Let's face it, most buyers at large companies, which by definition is where a CISO is typically, they have to make safe decisions, right? They got to justify big expense. And the CFO, reads the Wall Street Journal every day. And if you go to him and say, we need a new SIM platform, and we're looking at this company in Ann Arbor called Blumera, the CFO will say, never heard of them. Where do they sit on the Gartner Magic Quadrant? And, on the Magic Quadrant, on the upper right-hand quadrant, you're going to have I assume Splunk and Elastic and IBM QRadar, I believe, is still there, which seems kind of silly. IBM has so little faith in that product that they sold all the cloud-based business to Palo Alto Networks, right? Like, we can't do anything with this. You guys can have it. And Palo Alto, of course, said, we don't want any of your on-prem stuff. That's stupid, man. What are you doing? And that, unfortunately, is a buying behavior. And it's because if you go to the big analyst firms, they don't actually cover the new technology, right? They talk to the new technology, they absorb it. It's influencing them. But they turn around and tell the big guys to do what the little guys are doing, right? So there's like thought transfer. They're not thought leadership, they're thought transfer. They only cover about 3% of the cybersecurity industry. As you know, I cover 4,300 or so cybersecurity vendors. Gartner covers 134. Forrester, about the same number. They have gone on record saying, if you don't make $50 million a year in revenue, we're not going to cover you. And what does that just say? It's like, and what kind of buyer says we only buy from companies that do 50 million a year in revenue? Guaranteed, that 50 million represents a premium on pricing. That's how big companies get there, right? They've got all this overhead that they have to make up for. It's going to cost more to buy from them. So you should look at smaller companies.
So actually, you're saying that the classical model of analysts, the big analyst firms, is hindering innovation in a way.
It definitely is.
I'm at the other end of that side of the table. Obviously, they knocked our doors as well, and I mean, this is not a model that is fit for startups, even because the first thing they ask is a 30K check.
Right. Technically, you don't have to pay them. When I was at Gartner, I had some, knowledgeable people that knew how to take advantage of Gartner without paying them anything, because the briefings are open. And I wrote a book on how to manage Gartner called Up and to the Right. And, one of the things that I like is the drop-by briefing, which is classic. Hey, I'm going to be in your town in, Bumblefuck, Ontario. It just happened to be there for a meeting. Would you like to meet for coffee? And now you got FaceTime with the analyst that they will always remember because you're the only one who came to town. Well, when I was at Gartner, Jay Chaudhry did that multiple times. Every one of his 5 startups in that time frame, he flew up to Michigan, met me at the Starbucks across the street, very close to, I guess, the center of tech for Michigan, such as it is, and would demo his wireless security or his email security solution. It had a huge impact.
That's a lesson for me, I would say.
Yeah,
definitely. Of course, yeah.
The other thing is buy billboards in the analyst's hometown between his house or her house and the airport. And they're going to see your billboards and you go, ooh, you're big, you're important, and nobody's ever done this, but quote the analyst in the billboard and put their picture on the billboard.
That's the ego play. Yeah,
exactly.
It helps. Yeah.
Exactly. Or do it in the airport, then you're safer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We've covered technology like SIEMs and log management. In the corner of data protection, what would you consider if a vendor claims your data is safe in our solution? What are the receipts that you would want to see from such a vendor?
Yeah, first of all, unfortunately, that doesn't cut it. It doesn't matter if you're in some regulatory environments, HIPAA in particular, if a medical record ends up in a vendor's environment in any way, it's out of your control. And you have to report that as a HIPAA incident. So, and that's what led to this concept of, AI guardrails, which is rapidly turning into AI DLP. so data leak prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, so the guardrails are there to keep people from uploading health records, PII of any sort, financial information of the company. You would think there would be intellectual property of the company that, if you've got some cool concept for a design of something, why not pass it out to ChatGPT and get its input, right? It could help you formulate your ideas, but that might be an issue. You don't want to let that out there, even though ChatGPT isn't stealing your data yet, but they are logging everything. It may be discoverable in court, or, a government entity could have access to it in the future. So the guardrails play upon people's fear of that happening. And it's recognized practically, it's easier for a board and the CFO to be convinced that there's a problem than it is to convince them that AI is a huge opportunity and it's going to, increase their profitability and reduce their expenses if they use it appropriately. So there's spending already on these guardrails that's going on. That's the simple side of it, I guess. The harder side is how to protect the models when they're being trained on your data in particular. And I know that's where Wodan comes into play. So just how do you do that? And of course, you can't ask me that because that involves a lot of math. It goes way beyond me.
Now, and to your first point, actually, you said as soon as your data leaves your premises, it's already a breach, or it could already be a breach. That's the problem with, of course, data floating around in its clear text format, and not enough data in use encryption happening, so that people are just assuming that it is correct and normal and usual to not have data encrypted.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of it's a little bit maybe have been created by this move to using SSL everywhere. So data in motion is encrypted.
People believe with that they're covered.
And even, the browser tells me if the certificate's not there, that it's not safe. It's not secure. So certificate is there, then it's secure. And it's like, even though I'm just passing my data off to a web server that probably has zero protections at all.
So who forgot that SSL has termination?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It gets terminated at the server, period.
Completely. And then we talk about no trust or zero trust all this time, and yet to me the true meaning of zero trust is it's encrypted and I have the keys. And
correct. And
I don't trust anybody
correct.
with the keys to that or to see it unless I explicitly say they can see it. And that's where somehow with your magic you bring that to play so that you can actually share and work on data that's encrypted.
Why do you think that is? So this is a question that just pops in my head now. Why do you think this dark field of data and use encryption is so unknown to CISOs, even to security techies? They simply don't know about this.
Yeah. I think because they can't get to understanding it, right? It's because homomorphic encryption is got a bad rap early on, right? That it was slow. So nobody wants to slow down anything. But also it's really, really hard to understand. It's like symmetric keys I can understand, that's just like a cipher with a really, really long key. Asymmetric encryption, okay, I just passed the symmetric key with this other magic that happened. I can get there. Go on the next phase. Harder to understand. The use case for all security, you have to have a use case. So just like the people that are selling post-quantum encryption technology today, they have to make up a threat, right? That somebody's going to record all of your encrypted traffic and replay it and decrypt it later.
Yes.
So that's like a totally made up threat, and it's happening for sure. Now you're talking about the value of data for over a period of time, right? Social security number is only good for 95 years, right? At the most. Um, now, internal memos in the State Department, those are valuable forever, right? You don't want to replay them. You don't want them to be decrypted or stolen by Bradley Manning and passed off to WikiLeaks. So, yeah, I think it's so hard selling better security, right? Because everybody's so happy with good enough. And with all of IT, everybody's happy with good enough. And
Well, that's a
it's,
very interesting bridge you make actually to the attacker side, because attackers are not waiting and are really ramping up with AI. They're using AI for automating their attacks. So what was good enough will soon not be good enough anymore.
That's right. That's right.
And
totally agree.
so what would you consider being the biggest attacker productivity gains from using AI? Is it the access to systems? Is it lateral movement between systems? Or is it the really harmful stuff, the data exfiltration?
I think for the attackers, it's going to be that AI is going to democratize being an attacker, right? It's going to make it a lot easier. Instead of following a script handed to you by somebody who's smart enough to come up with it, you'll be able to work on your own and use models to walk you through it, right? They have to be jailbroken. But at this point, if you downloaded an instance of Llama, it'd be a great hacking tool once you removed its barriers to not doing that. And now you can just work on your own, create your own stuff. And if it's
there
really
are specific
successful,
LLMs just for this purpose as well.
just for that purpose, yeah.
Yeah.
But you might want to, stay out of trouble with law enforcement. So you'd want to really, really be secret and private. And first thing you would ask is, how do I keep all of this from being discovered? I think that's the biggest threat. It's always been the biggest threat. Because we've always had targeted attackers, but it's when most cybercrime was invented by the Russian business network when they took some iframes vulnerabilities that were, recently discovered, and instead of turning them into a worm that could have spread server to server, they turned it into a way to steal credentials, and then turned that into a managed service business model where they farmed it out so everybody could take advantage of it. And that was way back in the mid 2000s that happened and gave rise to what we have today. So now, of course, everything's turned into a new way of, or just a way to find more ransomware victims and, extort from them in multiple ways. And down the road, will be some more serious intellectual property theft and breaching theft that will be going on and selling those goods that are stolen.
Yeah. So it's the full attack that gets automated. It's not just the entrance. It's up until the data exfiltration that can really be automated with AI tools now.
And it's going to be so fast. And you can go back and see presentations I pitched 10 years ago. And it was, I was using drones. Remember the U.S. Navy was working on an autonomous drone, which is terrifying in itself. The program was canceled probably because technology had evolved and they had a new program that was actually doing it. But I use that as a metaphor for autonomous attacks on our network. So here you've got the mean time to discover a breach is still about 227 days, something like that. And I talk to organizations that can get it down to 48 hours. And, if the attack is manual, like way back in 2010 when EMC or RSA, the security division of EMC, got hacked, they had 2 days in response. And then they saw the Chinese hackers taking the secret seeds to the RSA secure ID tokens, and they could stop it halfway. Not, they happen to get the seeds for the tokens that Lockheed Martin was using and used it against Lockheed Martin. But those days are long gone. You know, you have minutes. In other words, you have to have either have protected systems that, like encryption, that prevent that from happening, or you have to have blindingly fast detection and response, which, you know, we're working on, but it's not there yet. You're gonna, you know, and there'll be an arms race. You know, what's going to happen is the bad guys will get so they can attack, penetrate, move laterally, get the keys to the kingdom, and exfiltrate in minutes. And the good guys will get so they can see the first step and stop it, and see the other attempt. You know, there'll be hundreds, thousands of attempts, all automatically generated, and they'll be in a pretty good shape to stop it. Those are only the top 1% of defenders. So the bad guys will just go after everybody else and continue to steal from them.
Well, and it's so scary to hear this, because if you just said most of the organizations are leaning towards it's good enough, and then this good enough is going to be not good enough very, very soon.
Yeah. Imagine the penetration to Windows that Defender has. And Defender is the definition of good enough security, right? It's kind of good enough, right? If you don't have however much CrowdStrike costs per device per year, you use Defender, and it's good enough compared to old McAfee or Symantec or AVG or Vest. But all of a sudden that's not good enough. All of a sudden, you know, an attack against it just grabs all, you know, whatever 500 million endpoint devices that are protected by Defender. It's going to be a problem.
What would you consider now automatable with AI attacks that was not automatable before?
So I have, we've seen the proof of concept for AI creating the exploits from a CVE in minutes, right? So, so we all see the CVE, we all go, ooh, we've got to schedule a patching routine.
Yeah.
The attackers can now easily have an exploit the same day, right? And if they've got the rest of, you know, if the exploit is the fuse on the bomb, they got the rest of the bomb all set, ready to go, and they just wait for the exploit, plug it in, off it goes.
That's a very interesting thing you just mentioned, because there are two CVEs around trusted execution environments of Intel and AMD that we claimed already before, like these environments are not secure enough. It's again, also investors we were talking to before, they were like, the TEE is good enough. Well, look, it's not good enough. No. And then if you now say indeed that with automation, LLMs can just create an exploit from that in seconds, that's amazing.
And then there also been proof of concept of fully autonomous attacks where they just identify a target. And I think what school did this one come from? I forget. And just took minutes to get in, you know, traverse and get out.
Which controls are being moved around by automated attacks. So how are attackers routing around obstacles that were classical, very good defense?
Yeah, well, they'll still get in forever over email, right? So either extremely well socially engineered email, or just clever click here, get infected. And even then, you know, the social engineering attack, maybe using deep fakes. I don't think, you know, you really need deep fakes to pull these off. Could get somebody to take an action, right? You know, it's amazing how William Gibson foresaw all of this in 1995, right? So he had the AI actually hacked the brain of somebody, you know, in a military hospital, you know, just by things that exposed him to. And you could see that easily. If you could expose what somebody saw on TikTok, you could sway them in some way.
True. Yeah. Maybe on a positive note, because these are doom scenarios, of course, but on the positive side, how, as a defender, what would be one thing that I have to do like this quarter to counter automated attacks?
You have to engage with one of the 39 SOC automation solutions and start using them right away. And because next year, you're going to get rid of your SOC and you're going to replace it totally with automation. And you got to be ready for that. And you should be talking about that in your budget discussions right now. Because halfway through the year and you go, oh my God, this is amazing. It'll be a difficult sell. It's like, hey, how come you didn't put it in the budget? Why didn't you see into the future that you're going to need this? You're going to start hearing from your compatriots and colleagues at other companies that they're doing it and it's working. And they're seeing real returns. And that, and then the people in the SOC, now you just freed up a whole bunch of people that are already in your system that can work on other important stuff. Get them working on automating vulnerability management. That's next. Get them working on being ready for replacing existing DLP systems. The DLP industry is going to be completely turned over in probably 18 months. The solutions available today, they're either gateway or endpoint driven, and they're fingerprinting unstructured data, taking little swaths of it and taking hashes of it and hoping that you'll be able to detect that on the way out. Nobody trusts their DLP, so they set it on alert only. So that generates thousands of alerts. I've talked to companies that have 20 people in their DLP group just, reviewing the alerts that they get from the DLP, which is insane. That's like, yeah, you shouldn't have that at all.
No. Looking from your role as an analyst, how do you advise CISOs to make informed opinions on all the stuff out there? Like there's a content fire hose, especially now AI, everything gets AI washed as well. How would you provide guidance in a good selection of technology?
Yeah, of course, I'm completely sold on how I do it. So I've, spent 20 years using data in order to track the industry. And so the hard part is identifying all the vendors. Extremely difficult to do that. But they eventually make themselves known as they appear at conferences or first time they get funding or issue a press release. Then they fall into our net. We capture them and add them. So one thing a CISO could do is, use our platform where they could generate their own news filters that just feed them information on new products, new developments, etc. And review that once a day, just so you keep up with what's going on out there. You should have access to somebody that can tell you what's getting invested in. So, if you look at it, the VCs, so first comes the innovators. They got the new ideas. They can take advantage of a market opportunity. They go to the VCs. VCs put the money in what they think are going to be the winners. And sometimes they make the winners by putting that in. So if you are watching that, you're going to know where this industry is going for sure. Subscribe to my Substack because it's free. All my research is free. There are other good independent analysts coming to the fore, and you can follow them as well without paying them a penny until you need them for special services. And if you have a relationship with the big analyst firms, call them up, put them on the spot. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them that you are going to buy a SOC automation tool this quarter. Get the analysts to spend more time covering the space to help people make those decisions.
Do you see a good balance between internal decision making, third party labs, and analyst reviews, or is it still very much internal?
Yeah, there aren't any third party labs, unfortunately, right? And now, with the caveat that I see NSS Labs is coming back. So the founder, just doesn't know how to give up, which is great. I appreciate that. So he's taking another stab at it. Most solutions are done by internal review, right? So you got to beef that up and make sure you've got a team that can set that up quickly in your own labs. or you learn from people who've done that at Morgan Stanley or one of the big security shops, and get information from them about what they're using. Yeah, proof of concept is very, very short for most of these. Less than a day to install, and the next day you're seeing results. So I think it's well worth the time invested to look at a couple. As soon as you find one where there's a ROI, right? If they want 50,000 for their agent a year, and you just did the work of 2 SOC analysts, whatever, just do it. Why not? You're going to save money and be more secure at the same time.
Yeah. What will be your metrics for upgrading a vendor from interesting to credible?
Ooh, yeah. I must admit,
if you can disclose.
Yeah, sure. I track their, first of all, there's the credibility is established. Are these the right people to work on this problem? And it comes across immediately, right? They'll list their startup experience at other successful startups. But after that establishment of viable, then I look at their headcount growth, and it's that headcount growth chart always tells the story, right? You can see each funding round, the slope goes faster after each funding round. If they run into trouble, like not AI security companies, but the previous generation, they got funded in 2021, 22, throughout 23, totally flattened out because they're told no more money for you. You're on your own. So of course they contain their costs.
Is headcount growth a metric you think is gonna hold up, because now a single or a small team, high impact startups are making their way through to the top? So a team of 10 will maybe become a team of 20, but not a team of 200, and still make a huge impact. So is that metric still the metric to follow?
It is for now, and it'll have to be adjusted. So when a company we may have a AI adjustment factor, right? If they're leveraging AI instead of hiring people, then maybe like you say, half the number of people is equivalent metric, something like that. If it'll be really strange to have to think about. We've always had a metric, at least I've always observed a metric, when a company hits 1,000 employees, they're ready to IPO, if the market is ready for them. Right now, we've got multiple companies that are well over 1,000 employees. Zscaler was the last one to go public with, they just passed 1,000 when they filed their S1. And now I think Cato Networks is 2,000 or 3,000 people. Netscope went public with more than 1,000 people.
Challenging times to go public.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Is there any other time?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But Sam Altman says it'll be $1 billion company, a single person $1 billion company. And they won't need funding, right? They'll be self-funding for sure. If you think about it, I know Gartner's got 104 cybersecurity industry analysts. Our goal is to outproduce them as far as research. We've got more data than they do, so we can do that.
There you go. To your role, you've argued before that analysts have become part journalist, part influencer. So what changes for you in being that, in doing that, and how do you remain the balance between not going overboard on the influence side?
You get tired of the influencer battle, right? It's stressful. You've got to produce every single day. I was at a marketing conference for cybersecurity, and I was just there to sign my books. So I'm standing in somebody's booth, and all of a sudden over the PA, they say, hey, the influencer speed dating session is going on now in the main room. So the big long table, and on one side were influencers, the other side marketers, and they could talk for 2 minutes with each one or something like that. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm an influencer. How come nobody asked me? I'm here, right? Pay my own way to get here. But later on, I talked to one of the influencers. You've seen her on LinkedIn, and I asked her, so, how did you get to be an influencer? And she said, well, I've got 2 million followers on TikTok, and for her cybersecurity training videos. I said, wow, what does that take, in terms of effort? And she says, well, you have to produce 2 30-second videos a day, which takes about an hour and a half each. And you have to do that every day for a year. And that's when I realized I'm not in the influence game. I'm not going there. That's a lot of work. And I respect people who can pull that off. It's very, very impressive. So right now, I've decided to just focus on the data and making it useful for people. And I demonstrate how useful it is by publishing research using the data. And don't have time to do it all. And then occasionally, when a particular large vendor says something so egregious that I have to step in and lecture them, I will do that as well. That people love it when I do that, except for the vendor.
Can imagine. Yeah. Cool. Looking at the time we're flying through it, I have a couple of lightning questions to end with a bang.
All right.
If you're in for it. So short, lightning answers. Overrated in AI security.
Overrated in AI security is identity and tracking identity. And it's not necessarily overrated as it's way too early. Okay. We're just not there yet.
Okay. Underrated control you wish more teams loved.
Blocking telnet.
Okay, one metric CISOs should put on a dashboard tomorrow.
Mean time to detect.
Yeah. Isn't it on their dashboards yet?
I hope it is, but I bet you 99% of CISOs don't track it because they can't see it. They don't know, right?
Yeah, true. Right. Tool you would kill if you had a red button.
A tool I would kill?
Telnet.
I love telnet. Tool I would kill if I had a red button. It's not a security tool. It's Teams.
Oh, okay.
And everybody will agree with that.
Go in that. Okay. And the sentence you never want to hear anymore in a board meeting.
You have to learn to speak the business language.
Oof. Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, this is like a fireworks at the end. You have the bouquet, and then everything comes out at the end. That's how I felt these lightning questions were to end a very interesting talk, a very nice chat with you, Richard. I'm very grateful for your insights and for your time to be here. So for the listeners, we'll link IT Harvest to this video, and also the Security Yearbook and other materials that were mentioned. If today pushed your thinking, then share one thing that you will add to your evaluation criteria for this quarter, and we're all happy chaps. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thanks, Bob. It was great.
It was great.